Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Foundation. Vincent Torres had built his life like a fortress, methodical, impenetrable, and designed to protect what mattered most. At 38, he owned 3 successful auto repair shops across Denver, each one a testament to his transformation from a troubled youth who'd learned survival on the streets to a man who commanded respect through sheer force of will. His hands, now calloused from honest work, had once known different kinds of violence. Growing up in foster care after his parents died in a house fire when he was 12, Vincent had learned early that the world showed no mercy to the weak. By 16, he was running with a crew that specialized in making problems disappear permanently. But a close call with a murder charge at 19 had straightened him out. He'd channeled his ruthless instincts into building something legitimate, though the old Vincent never truly died. He simply wore a business suit now. The night he met Rebecca Hoffman at a charity gala 5 years ago, he thought he'd found his missing piece. She was radiant in a way that seemed genuine, a pediatric nurse with kind eyes and a laugh that could light up a room. Her blonde hair caught the ballroom lights as she spoke passionately about helping children, and Vincent found himself captivated by her apparent innocence. What he didn't know was that Rebecca's sweetness was as carefully constructed as his own respectable facade. Behind her angelic smile lay a woman who'd grown up in a household where her mother, Patricia Hoffman, had taught her that men were resources to be exploited, not partners to be loved. Patricia, a former beauty queen turned bitter divorcee, had raised Rebecca with one clear message: secure the wealthiest man possible, then take everything when the time was right. Rebecca's father, Dr. Raymond Hoffman, was a plastic surgeon who'd lost his medical license due to a malpractice suit involving a patient's death, a detail Rebecca had carefully hidden from Vincent. Raymond now worked as a consultant for medical malpractice lawyers, harboring deep resentment against successful men like Vincent who reminded him of what he'd lost. The Hoffmans had immediately seen Vincent as their golden ticket. His businesses were thriving, his reputation was solid, and most importantly, he seemed genuinely devoted to Rebecca. After a whirlwind courtship, they married in what Vincent thought was the happiest day of his life. Their daughter, Emma, arrived 3 years later, a beautiful child with Rebecca's blonde curls and Vincent's determined chin. Vincent adored her completely, never suspecting that Rebecca saw the child primarily as insurance, another chain to bind Vincent to their marriage and ensure maximum financial gain when their plan reached fruition. But Rebecca underestimated one crucial detail about her husband. Vincent's love came with an unspoken contract, absolute loyalty in exchange for absolute protection. He would die for those he loved, but betrayal was an unforgivable sin that awakened the dangerous man he'd worked so hard to bury. The Hoffmans' plan was elegant in its simplicity. They would slowly position Vincent as an unfit father and unstable husband, building a case for Rebecca to gain full custody of Emma and claim the majority of his assets in a divorce. Patricia had connections in family court through her book club, which included Judge Helen Morrison's wife. Raymond's legal contacts provided insight into how to document Vincent's supposed mental decline. They began their campaign subtly. Rebecca started attending therapy sessions, creating a paper trail of Vincent's alleged verbal abuse and erratic behavior, all carefully fictional but professionally documented. She recorded conversations out of context, photographed minor damages to the house that she claimed came from Vincent's rages, and slowly poisoned Emma's relationship with her father by telling the child that Daddy was sick and might hurt them. Vincent noticed Rebecca becoming distant, but attributed it to work stress. He had no idea that his wife was methodically destroying their life together, planning to take everything he'd built and leave him with nothing. The perfect opportunity came when Vincent mentioned he was driving to Colorado Springs to look at a potential 4th shop location. Rebecca saw her chance to accelerate their timeline. Chapter 2, The Setup. The morning of March 15th started like any other. Vincent kissed Rebecca goodbye, hugged Emma close, and promised to bring her a surprise from his trip. He had no way of knowing that Rebecca had spent the previous evening making very different preparations. At 8 a.m., Rebecca called her father. He just left for Colorado Springs. It's time. Raymond's medical knowledge proved crucial for their plan. He provided Rebecca with a small vial of ketamine, enough to incapacitate someone without killing them, but sufficient to cause a serious accident. Rebecca had been slipping tiny doses into Vincent's coffee for weeks, making him occasionally drowsy and forgetful, laying groundwork for their narrative of his mental instability. But today's dose would be different. Rebecca had calculated exactly how much would be needed to cause Vincent to lose control of his vehicle at a specific location, a winding stretch of highway known for accidents, where a crash would seem completely natural. She followed Vincent in her own car, staying far enough back to avoid detection. When she saw him pulling over at a rest stop, feeling the effects of the drug, she knew the moment had arrived. Using a burner phone, she called 911. "I think I just saw a man force another car off the road near mile marker 47, she reported, disguising her voice. "The car that got hit rolled down the embankment. You need to send help immediately." The call would establish her as a concerned witness while providing an alibi for being in the area. She'd already ditched the ketamine vial in a dumpster miles away. Vincent's truck rolled 3 times before slamming into a cluster of pine trees. The impact was devastating. Broken ribs, a punctured lung, severe head trauma. When the paramedics found him, he was unconscious and barely breathing. Rebecca arrived at the hospital within hours, playing the role of the devastated wife to perfection. She wept in the waiting room, accepted comfort from nurses, and made all the right sounds about hoping and praying for her husband's recovery. But privately, she was calculating. The doctor said Vincent might never wake up, and if he did, there could be permanent brain damage. Either scenario worked perfectly for their plan. A vegetative Vincent would be even easier to control than a dead one, and would ensure continued access to his business assets through power of attorney. Patricia and Raymond arrived that evening, both wearing masks of concern that fooled everyone except their daughter, who recognized the cold satisfaction in their eyes. They'd done it. Vincent Torres, the man who'd never shown weakness to anyone, lay helpless in an ICU bed while they prepared to dismantle everything he'd built. Dr. Sarah Martinez, Vincent's attending physician, was cautiously optimistic about his chances, but warned that brain injuries were unpredictable. "The next 48 hours are critical," she explained to Rebecca. "If he wakes up, we'll know more about potential cognitive damage." Rebecca nodded tearfully, playing her part even as she silently hoped Vincent would remain unconscious long enough for them to complete their legal maneuvering. Patricia had already contacted their family court friend about expediting custody proceedings based on Vincent's condition, while Raymond was researching how to gain medical power of attorney for an incapacitated spouse. They had no idea that Vincent's street-hardened survival instincts were already stirring beneath the medical monitors and 4 tubes. The man who'd learned to fight for his life in foster homes and back alleys wasn't going to go down easily, even if his enemies thought they held all the cards. The Hoffmans celebrated quietly that night over dinner at Patricia's house, toasting their success with expensive wine. Emma sat in the next room, confused and scared about her father, while the adults who were supposed to protect her family planned its destruction. "Phase 2 starts tomorrow," Patricia declared, raising her glass. "By the end of the month, everything he owns will be ours, and that bastard will either be dead or wish he was." They couldn't have known that their incapacitated target was already beginning to stir, his mind sharp and his memory intact, ready to discover just how deep their betrayal ran. Chapter 3: The Awakening. Vincent's consciousness returned like water seeping through cracks in concrete, slowly, then all at once. He became aware of the steady beeping of monitors, the antiseptic smell of the hospital, and the dull ache radiating through his entire body. But he kept his breathing steady and his eyes closed, a survival instinct honed from years of dangerous situations where showing weakness meant death. Through the fog of medication, he heard familiar voices near his bed. Rebecca's voice, but stripped of the warmth he remembered. Everything is going according to plan, she said with satisfaction that chilled him to the bone. His mother-in-law's laugh followed, sharp and predatory. He's too clueless to notice. Vincent's blood turned to ice as the pieces fell into place. The recent distance from Rebecca, his increasing fatigue, the subtle changes in how she spoke to Emma about him. It hadn't been stress or imagination. It had been deliberate. He fought to control his breathing as fury built in his chest like molten steel. These people had tried to kill him. Not content with simply leaving, they'd attempted murder and were now standing over his hospital bed, celebrating their success. The old Vincent, the one who'd learned that mercy was a luxury the weak couldn't afford, stirred in the depths of his mind like a hibernating predator sensing prey. The lawyers say we can have the power of attorney paperwork ready by Friday, Patricia continued. Once that's in place, we can start liquidating his assets. The shops alone should bring in close to $2 million. And the custody hearing, Raymond's voice joined the conversation, equally cold and calculating. Judge Morrison's wife assured me it's a formality, Rebecca replied. With Vincent incapacitated and the documentation we've built up about his instability, I'll have full custody within a month. Emma will never have to see him again. Vincent's hands clenched almost imperceptibly beneath the hospital blanket. They weren't just stealing his money, they were stealing his daughter. The child he'd loved unconditionally, read bedtime stories to every night, taught to ride a bike in their driveway. They were planning to erase him from her life entirely. The sound of small footsteps interrupted his murderous thoughts. Mommy, Emma's voice, uncertain and scared. Is Daddy going to be okay? Shoot, sweetheart. Rebecca's tone changed instantly, becoming the nurturing mother Vincent had fallen in love with. Daddy is very sick. But remember what we talked about? Sometimes people get so sick that they can't come home anymore. I brought Officer Kelly like you asked, Emma said quietly. Vincent's eyes nearly snapped open. An officer? Why would Rebecca need police here unless? Mrs. Torres? A man's voice, official and professional. I'm Officer Daniel Kelly. You said you needed to discuss some concerns about your husband's behavior prior to the accident. The final piece of their plan crystallized in Vincent's mind. They weren't just going to take everything. They were going to destroy his reputation completely, frame him as an abuser, an unfit father, maybe even suggest he'd been responsible for his own accident. Thank you for coming, Officer Kelly, Rebecca said, her voice trembling with practiced vulnerability. I've been so worried about coming forward, but after what happened to Vincent, I realize I can't stay silent anymore. For Emma's safety, Vincent had heard enough. As they moved their conversation toward the hallway, supposedly to spare Emma from hearing difficult things, he began planning. Not the emotional, reactive planning of a hurt husband, but the cold, methodical planning of a man who'd once made dangerous people disappear without a trace. They thought he was unconscious, helpless, at their mercy. They had no idea that they'd just declared war on someone who had never lost a fight when everything was on the line. Over the next several hours, Vincent remained perfectly still, listening to every conversation, every phone call, every whispered plan. He learned about the drug coffee, the staged evidence of abuse, the bribery of court officials. He memorized names, timelines, and details. Dr. Martinez checked on him regularly, and during one late-night visit when she was alone, Vincent made his first careful move. Doctor, he whispered, barely audible. She jumped, then quickly moved closer. Mr. Torres? Can you hear me? Please, he breathed, his voice weak but urgent. Don't tell them I'm awake. My wife. She's not who you think she is. Dr. Martinez frowned, checking his monitors. Mr. Torres, you've suffered a serious head injury. It's common to have confusion, even paranoia. Listen to me, Vincent interrupted, his voice gaining strength. My wife drugged me. This wasn't an accident. If you tell her I'm conscious, she'll find a way to finish what she started. Something in his tone made the doctor pause. She'd seen enough domestic violence cases to recognize genuine fear, and despite her medical training telling her this could be brain injury-related paranoia, her instinct said otherwise. What do you need me to do? She asked quietly. Keep this between us for now. Let me gather strength and evidence. Can you do that? Dr. Martinez looked at Vincent's charts, then back at his alert, calculating eyes. This wasn't the confused rambling of a brain-injured patient. This was the clear thinking of a man who'd uncovered something terrible. "I can give you some time," she agreed. "But if your condition deteriorates, or if I think you're in danger, I'll have to act." "Understood. And doctor?" "Thank you." As she left, Vincent allowed himself the first genuine emotion since waking up, a cold smile that would have terrified anyone who knew what it meant. The Hoffmans thought they were playing chess with a fool. They were about to learn they'd sat down across from a grandmaster. Chapter 4. Gathering Intelligence. Dr. Martinez proved to be an invaluable ally. Over the next 3 days, she maintained a fiction that Vincent remained unconscious while secretly monitoring his recovery. His body was healing faster than expected. The same toughness that had helped him survive foster care was serving him well now. During visiting hours, Vincent listened as his family revealed more of their plan. Rebecca had indeed been drugging him for weeks, but not just with ketamine. Raymond had provided her with a cocktail of medications designed to cause memory issues, mood swings, and disorientation, all symptoms that would support their narrative of mental instability. "The beauty of it," Raymond explained to Patricia during one of their bedside vigils, "is that even if he survives, the brain injury combined with the drug history will make him seem unreliable. No court will believe anything he says." They were thorough, Vincent had to admit. They'd thought of everything except the possibility that their target might be awake and listening. Emma visited daily, usually with Rebecca, and those moments were the hardest for Vincent. His daughter would hold his hand and whisper stories about school, about how she missed him, about how she didn't understand why everyone seemed so sad. Rebecca would watch with what looked like maternal concern, but Vincent could now see the calculation behind her eyes. "Daddy, I had a bad dream," Emma whispered during one visit when Rebecca stepped out to talk with Patricia. "I dreamed that you went away and never came back, and Mommy said it was because you didn't love me anymore." Vincent's heart shattered. They were already poisoning his daughter against him, making her doubt his love even while he lay helpless in a hospital bed. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. That night, Dr. Martinez brought him news that changed everything. "I've been doing some research," she said quietly, checking to ensure they were alone. "Your wife has been asking very specific questions about your prognosis, particularly about cognitive function and long-term disability. She's also been in contact with a lawyer who specializes in medical power of attorney cases." "What kind of questions?" Vincent asked, though he suspected he already knew. Whether you'd be able to manage your own affairs if you woke up. Whether there might be permanent memory loss or personality changes. She seemed very interested in the possibility of legal guardianship. Vincent nodded grimly. "She's planning to have me declared incompetent." "What else?" "I also ran some blood tests on samples we took when you first arrived." "Vincent, you had enough ketamine in your system to incapacitate a horse. No one takes that much accidentally." The confirmation of what he already knew still hit like a physical blow. "Can you prove it?" "The levels are documented in your medical records." "But ketamine metabolizes quickly. If someone wanted to claim it was administered at the hospital for medical reasons, it would be hard to prove otherwise after this much time." Vincent was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then he asked, "Doctor, I need a favor. Can you help me make some phone calls without anyone knowing?" Dr. Martinez hesitated. "What kind of calls?" "I need to contact some old friends. People who can help me investigate my wife's background and her family's." "Vincent, if you're thinking about doing something illegal." "Nothing illegal," he assured her, which was technically true. "The illegal parts would come later. I just need information. Knowledge is power, and right now, they have all the power because they think I'm helpless." After some consideration, Dr. Martinez agreed to help, understanding that Vincent needed allies if he was going to survive whatever his family had planned. Vincent's first call was to Tony Castellano, a private investigator he'd known since his street days. Tony had gone legitimate around the same time Vincent had, but he still had connections in the darker corners of Denver's underworld. "Jesus, Vincent," Tony's voice crackled through the phone Dr. Martinez had smuggled in. "I heard about the accident. How you holding up?" "Better than my family thinks," Vincent replied carefully. "Tony, I need you to look into some people for me. Deep background checks, financial records, criminal history, everything you can dig up. He gave Tony the names Rebecca, Patricia, Raymond, even the lawyer and Judge Rebecca had mentioned. I also need surveillance on them. I want to know where they go, who they meet with, what they're planning. This sounds personal, man. What's going on? They tried to kill me, Tony, and now they're going after my daughter. The line was quiet for a moment. Tony had known Vincent long enough to understand what that meant. I'll have preliminary information by tomorrow. Full workup by the end of the week. And Tony? This needs to stay quiet. As far as anyone knows, I'm still unconscious. Got it. Vincent, whatever you're planning, you know I'm in if you need backup. Vincent smiled coldly. I might take you up on that. His second call was to Miguel Santos, who owned a successful security company but had once been Vincent's partner in their teenage crew. Miguel specialized in electronic surveillance and had connections with people who could make life very difficult for Vincent's enemies. Miguel, I need eyes and ears on some people. Can you set up surveillance without them knowing? For you? Consider it done. What's the situation? Vincent explained, and Miguel's response was immediate and violent. Those fuckers try to kill you? Vincent, just say the word and they disappear. Not yet, Vincent cautioned, but I may need that option later. For now, I just need information and evidence. You got it. I'll have cameras and bugs in place within 24 hours. His final call was to Detective Lisa Crawford, one of the few honest cops he'd maintained a relationship with over the years. Lisa had been instrumental in Vincent's transition to legitimate business, and she owed him several favors. Lisa, I need to ask you about something confidentially. Hypothetically, if someone wanted to frame an unconscious person for domestic abuse, how would they do it? Vincent, what the hell is going on? Are you in trouble? He explained the situation, and Lisa's cop instincts immediately engaged. They're building a paper trail, she confirmed. Therapy records, police reports, witness statements. If it's done right, it's almost impossible to fight, especially if the accused can't defend themselves. What would you need to prove it was fabricated? Contradictory evidence. Proof the witnesses were lying or coerced. Financial connections between the accusers. Or, she paused, where you could catch them in the act of fabricating evidence. Interesting, Vincent mused. Lisa, I may need your help soon. Officially, just promise me you won't do anything stupid. Vincent almost laughed. Everything he was planning was stupid, dangerous, and probably illegal. But his enemies had made one fatal mistake. They'd left him alive. As Dr. Martinez helped him end the calls and hide the phone, Vincent felt the familiar calm that had always preceded his most dangerous moments. The old Vincent was fully awake now, and the Hoffmans were about to learn why mercy was a luxury he'd never been able to afford. Chapter 5, The Web Titans. Tony's preliminary report arrived faster than expected, delivered by Dr. Martinez, who'd agreed to serve as Vincent's covert communication channel. What he read made his blood run cold, not from fear, but from pure, crystalline rage. The Hoffmans had done this before. Rebecca's first husband, Michael Brennan, had died in a suspicious car accident 4 years before she met Vincent. The police report showed brake failure on a mountain road, but Tony had uncovered something the original investigation missed. Rebecca had taken out a substantial life insurance policy on Michael just 6 months before his death. More damning was what happened after. Rebecca had inherited Michael's successful landscaping business, which Patricia and Raymond had systematically dismantled and sold within a year. The money had funded their comfortable lifestyle and Raymond's legal troubles. There's more, Dr. Martinez said quietly, reading Tony's notes. Your wife was married to someone else before Michael. Thomas Reed, a contractor in Wyoming. He disappeared during a camping trip 3 years into their marriage. Body was never found, but Rebecca inherited everything through a will that was suspiciously convenient. Vincent stared at the ceiling, processing the information. His wife wasn't just unfaithful, she was a serial killer. And Emma, his precious daughter, was living with these monsters. The surveillance Miguel had installed was already paying dividends. Audio recordings from the Hoffman house revealed their ongoing plans with chilling clarity. Vincent's recovery is taking too long, Patricia's voice came through the hidden microphone in her living room. We need to accelerate the timeline. The doctors are saying he might wake up soon, Rebecca replied, her voice tense. If he does, everything falls apart. Not necessarily, Raymond interjected. I still have some medical connections. If Vincent has a relapse, another brain bleed maybe, it would be unfortunate but not unexpected. Vincent's hands clenched as he listened to them plan his murder with the casual tone of people discussing dinner plans. What about Emma? Rebecca asked. She's been asking too many questions about when Daddy is coming home. We'll handle Emma, Patricia said coldly. Children are resilient. She'll forget about him eventually. That night, Emma visited with Rebecca, as usual, but this time Vincent was ready. Dr. Martinez had equipped him with a tiny recording device that could capture conversations even when he appeared unconscious. Mommy, Emma said quietly, holding Vincent's hand. Mrs. Rodriguez at school says that when people get hurt in car accidents, sometimes it's not really an accident. She says sometimes bad people hurt good people on purpose. Vincent felt his daughter's small fingers tighten around his, and his heart broke at the fear in her voice. Oh, sweetheart, Rebecca replied, her tone carefully controlled. Mrs. Rodriguez shouldn't fill your head with scary stories. Daddy's accident was just that, an accident. Sometimes these things just happen. But I heard Grandma Pat and Grandpa Ray talking, Emma continued, her 6-year-old honesty cutting through Rebecca's lies. They said something about making Daddy go away forever. What did they mean? The silence that followed was electric. Vincent could feel Rebecca's tension through the air. Emma, you must have misunderstood, Rebecca said finally. Grandma and Grandpa love Daddy very much. They're just worried about him, like we all are. I want to talk to Daddy, Emma insisted. Even if he's sleeping, I want to tell him I love him. Of course, baby. Tell him whatever you want. Emma leaned close to Vincent's ear, her warm breath tickling his skin. Daddy, I know you can hear me. Mommy thinks I don't understand, but I do. I'm scared, Daddy. I don't want them to make you go away. Please wake up soon. It took every ounce of Vincent's self-control not to open his eyes and gather his daughter into his arms. Instead, he squeezed her hand just slightly, enough for her to feel, but subtle enough that Rebecca wouldn't notice. Emma gasped softly. Mommy, I think Daddy squeezed my hand. That's just your imagination, sweetheart, Rebecca said quickly. Come on, visiting hours are almost over. As they left, Vincent heard Emma whisper, I felt it, Daddy. I know you're in there. The next morning brought devastating news from Detective Crawford. She'd done some discreet investigating into Officer Kelly, the cop Rebecca had brought to create a police report. Vincent, this guy is dirty, Lisa reported during a carefully arranged phone call. He's been taking money from divorce lawyers for years, creating bogus domestic violence reports for custody cases. I can't prove it officially without blowing your cover, but I've got enough to know he's compromised. What about the judge? Vincent asked. Judge Morrison is clean, but her wife runs a book club that's basically a high society gossip ring. Patricia Hoffman has been feeding them stories about your supposed abuse for months, poisoning the well before any official proceedings begin. Vincent absorbed this information, adding it to his growing understanding of how thoroughly the Hoffmans had planned his destruction. They'd left nothing to chance, corrupting every system that might protect him. But they'd made one crucial error. They assumed that Vincent Torres, successful businessman and devoted father, was all there was to know about him. They had no idea about the dangerous man he'd been before, or the lethal skills he could still access when everything he loved was threatened. That evening, Miguel called with an update that changed everything. Vincent, you need to hear this. Miguel's voice was tight with urgency. We caught them planning your murder. It's happening tomorrow night. The recording was crystal clear. Raymond explaining how he could access the hospital's drug storage, Patricia providing alibis, and Rebecca agreeing to be present when Vincent took a turn for the worse. They're planning to inject you with potassium chloride, Miguel continued. It'll stop your heart, and with your existing injuries, it'll look like natural complications. Vincent closed his eyes, feeling the familiar cold calm settle over him. The time for gathering intelligence was over. Tomorrow night, the Hoffmans would come to finish what they'd started. They had no idea that their intended victim would be ready for them. "Miguel," Vincent said quietly, "remember what you offered about making people disappear? Of course. I may need that option. But first I want them to suffer. All of them. What do you need?" Vincent smiled, and it was the cold, predatory expression that had once made dangerous men fear him. "I need to die tomorrow night, and then I need to come back from the dead." Chapter 6. The Resurrection. Dr. Martinez's hands shook as she prepared the cocktail of drugs Vincent had requested. "This is insane," she whispered. "If we miscalculate even slightly, you could actually die." "Trust me," Vincent replied, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what they were planning. "I've survived worse odds than this." The plan was elegantly simple. When the Hoffmans came to murder him tomorrow night, Vincent would already appear to be dead. A careful combination of medications would slow his heart rate and breathing to virtually undetectable levels, while maintaining enough brain function for him to remain conscious and aware. To anyone without sophisticated monitoring equipment, he would appear to have flatlined. Miguel had positioned his surveillance team throughout the hospital, ready to record everything. Tony had backup plans in place to protect Emma once the operation began. And Detective Crawford was standing by with warrants she couldn't officially execute until they had concrete evidence of attempted murder. "The timing has to be perfect," Dr. Martinez explained, checking Vincent's charts one final time. "I can keep you under for maybe 2 hours maximum. Any longer, and there could be permanent damage." 2 hours is all I need," Vincent assured her. "Once they think I'm dead, they'll reveal everything. Guilt makes people confess, and arrogance makes them brag." The drugs began taking effect as the sun set outside Vincent's window. His heart rate slowed, his breathing became shallow, and the monitors began showing the flatline pattern that would convince his family he'd finally succumbed to his injuries. At 9:47 p.m., the alarms began sounding. Rebecca arrived within minutes, having been coincidentally in the hospital cafeteria when Vincent took his turn for the worse. Her performance was Oscar-worthy. Tears, desperate pleas for the doctors to save him, the perfect image of a devastated wife. But Vincent, floating in a state of conscious near-death, heard the satisfaction beneath her sobs. Raymond arrived next, playing the grieving father-in-law, while secretly checking to ensure Vincent was truly gone. His medical training made him more thorough than the others, but even he was convinced by the carefully orchestrated scene. Patricia came last, bringing Emma despite the late hour. "I wanted to say goodbye," she explained to Dr. Martinez, who played her part perfectly, looking appropriately sympathetic while the hidden cameras recorded everything. "Daddy." Emma's voice was small and broken as she approached the bed. "Daddy, please don't be dead. I need you to come back." Through his medicated haze, Vincent felt his daughter's tears falling on his hand. The urge to comfort her was overwhelming, but he forced himself to remain still. This was for her, to protect her from the monsters who'd been masquerading as family. "He's gone, sweetheart," Rebecca said, her voice carefully modulated between grief and relief. "Daddy was very sick, and now he's at peace." "But I felt him squeeze my hand yesterday," Emma protested. "He was trying to tell me something." "That was just your imagination," Patricia said firmly. "Sometimes when we love someone very much, we imagine things that aren't real." As the family gathered around his corpse, Vincent listened to their true feelings emerge. "What happens now?" Rebecca asked quietly, thinking Emma couldn't hear. "Now we wait for the life insurance to pay out," Patricia replied. $2 million plus the businesses. You'll be set for life. And Emma will adjust. Children are resilient." But Emma wasn't adjusting. Vincent could hear her quiet sobs, could feel her small hand holding his with desperate hope. His daughter knew, with the intuition that children possess, that something was wrong with this picture. "Mommy," Emma whispered, "why don't you seem sad? When Grandpa Torres died, you cried for days. But now you just seem different." The silence that followed was telling. Rebecca struggled for an answer that would satisfy a 6-year-old's logic without revealing too much. "I'm sad inside, baby," she finally said. "Sometimes grown-ups show sadness differently." "But Grandma Pat is smiling," Emma observed with devastating honesty. And Grandpa Ray keeps looking at his watch like he wants to leave. Vincent almost smiled despite everything. His daughter was sharper than the Hoffmans had given her credit for. She was seeing through their performance, even when the hospital staff believed it completely. As the night wore on, the family's guard began to drop. They spoke more freely, believing Vincent was truly gone and Emma was too young to understand the significance of what she was hearing. "The lawyer will handle the estate proceedings," Raymond told Rebecca. "With the power of attorney paperwork we prepared, it should be straightforward." "What about the police investigation into the accident?" Rebecca asked. "Officer Kelly has already filed his report," Patricia assured her. Vincent was clearly unstable, probably suicidal. "The accident will be ruled as such, which actually works better for the insurance claim than if it appeared to be our fault." Vincent's blood would have boiled if he weren't already chemically suppressed. They'd thought of everything, planned for every contingency. Except one. At exactly 11:30 p.m., Dr. Martinez made her announcement. "I'm sorry, but I need to ask the family to step out while we prepare Mr. Torres for the morgue. It's hospital protocol." As they filed out, Emma pulled away from Rebecca's hand and ran back to Vincent's bedside. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered, pressing her face close to his ear. "And I know you love me too. I don't care what they say. You're not really gone. You're going to come back and save me, aren't you?" She kissed his forehead gently, and in that moment, Vincent knew that everything he was about to do would be worth it. His daughter believed in him, even when the rest of the world thought he was dead. As soon as the family was out of earshot, Dr. Martinez began administering the reversal drugs. Vincent's heart rate slowly climbed back to normal levels, his breathing deepened, and his consciousness fully returned. "How do you feel?" she asked anxiously. "Like I've been dead," Vincent replied hoarsely, "but very much alive. Do we get everything?" Miguel's voice came through the hidden communication device. "Every word, every expression, every tell. We got them cold, Vincent. Murder, conspiracy, insurance fraud, child endangerment. Enough to put them away for decades." "Good," Vincent said, sitting up slowly as feeling returned to his extremities. "But prison is too easy. They try to destroy my family, poison my daughter against me, and steal everything I've built. They wanted to erase Vincent Torres from existence." He looked at Dr. Martinez with eyes that now held no trace of the injured, helpless patient she'd been treating. "It's time to show them what Vincent Torres looks like when he stops playing dead. The old Vincent, the one who'd learned that sometimes the only justice available was the kind you made yourself, was fully awake now. And the Hoffmans were about to discover that some people were far more dangerous after you try to kill them. Chapter 7. Rising from the Dead. Vincent's death unleashed a flurry of activity from the Hoffmans that Miguel's surveillance network captured in devastating detail. Within hours of leaving the hospital, they were already dividing his assets like vultures over a corpse. From his hidden position in Dr. Martinez's office, Vincent watched the feeds with Tony and Miguel. The three men had reunited for the first time in 20 years, brought together by the kind of betrayal that demanded the old rules. "Look at this shit," Tony muttered, watching Patricia and Raymond celebrate with expensive champagne in their living room. "They're not even pretending to mourn." On another screen, Rebecca was already meeting with the estate lawyer, presenting forged power of attorney documents and a will that had mysteriously appeared after Vincent's death, a will that left everything to her and specifically excluded his brothers from his former crew, the only people who might have contested it. But the most damning footage came from Emma's bedroom, where Rebecca thought she was having a private conversation with her daughter. "Mommy, when is Daddy's funeral?" Emma asked, clutching the teddy bear Vincent had given her for her last birthday. "Soon, sweetheart. But you need to understand something important. Daddy wasn't the man we thought he was. He was sick in his mind, and sometimes he did bad things." "That's not true," Emma protested. "Daddy never did bad things. He was nice to me." Rebecca's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing cold frustration. "Emma, you're too young to understand. Adults know things that children don't. Daddy was dangerous, and it's better that he's gone." Vincent's hands clenched as he watched his wife systematically poison his daughter's memories of him. But Emma, bless her brave little heart, wasn't buying it. "You're lying. Emma said with the devastating honesty of childhood. And I don't think Daddy is really dead. I think he's coming back. Rebecca's face went white. What do you mean? Of course he's dead. You saw him in the hospital. Dead people don't squeeze hands, Emma replied simply. And dead people don't have dreams. I dreamed about Daddy last night, and he told me to be brave because he was going to fix everything. The silence that followed was electric. Rebecca stared at her daughter with something approaching fear, as if the child's intuition might somehow resurrect Vincent through sheer will. Dreams aren't real, Emma, Rebecca said finally. Daddy is gone, and you need to accept that. No, Emma said with quiet defiance. Daddy always keeps his promises, and he promised to protect me. Watching his daughter's courage gave Vincent the final piece of resolve he needed. Emma believed he would come back for her, and he wouldn't let her down. Phase 1 starts tonight, Vincent told his assembled team. Miguel, I need you to arrange a very special delivery to the Hoffman house. Tony, you're going to help me pay a visit to Officer Kelly. And Dr. Martinez, you're going to have a very interesting conversation with the insurance investigators. The plan Vincent had crafted was surgical in its precision and devastating in its scope. He wouldn't just expose the Hoffmans. He would systematically destroy every aspect of their lives while making them understand exactly what they'd awakened. At 2 a.m., Officer Kelly was leaving a bar where he'd been celebrating his latest payoff when he found Vincent Torres waiting by his patrol car. The corrupt cop's face went white as he stared at a dead man. Impossible, Kelly stammered, his hand instinctively moving toward his weapon. I wouldn't, Vincent said calmly, and something in his tone froze Kelly's hand. You're going to listen very carefully to what I have to say. Vincent had learned long ago that the most effective intimidation came not from threats, but from absolute certainty of consequences. He spoke quietly, matter-of-factly, explaining exactly what would happen to Kelly's career, his pension, his family's safety, and his physical well-being if he didn't immediately correct every false report he'd filed about Vincent. But they said you were dead, Kelly whispered. Do I look dead to you? Vincent asked, stepping closer. I know about the Hoffman payoffs, Daniel. I know about every dirty report you've filed for the last 5 years. Tomorrow morning, you're going to call Detective Crawford and confess everything. Or I'm going to make sure your wife learns about your gambling debts and your girlfriend in Aurora. Kelly's face crumpled. The confident corruption evaporated, leaving just a scared man who'd made terrible choices. What do you want me to do? Exactly what I tell you. And if you even think about warning the Hoffmans. Vincent's smile was arctic. Let's just say, I know people who make problems disappear permanently. While Vincent was handling Kelly, Miguel was implementing his own part of the plan. This special delivery to the Hoffman house was a gift basket with an unusual addition, high-end surveillance equipment disguised as innocent household items. A picture frame with a hidden camera, a clock with audio recording capability, and a decorative plant pot that could monitor all electronic communications in the house. But more importantly, the gift basket came with a card from your loving son-in-law. I'll be seeing you soon. Vincent. Patricia found the basket on their doorstep the next morning and immediately called Rebecca in panic. This isn't possible. Rebecca's voice shook through the recorded phone call. He's dead. We saw him die. Then explain the card. Patricia shrieked. Explain how a dead man sent us a gift basket. It has to be some kind of mistake. Maybe the delivery company mixed up the orders. But doubt was creeping into their voices, and doubt was the first step toward the complete psychological destruction Vincent had planned. Dr. Martinez, meanwhile, was having her conversation with the insurance investigators, a conversation that revealed the ketamine found in Vincent's system, the suspicious timing of the accident, and the unusual behavior of his family after his supposed death. I'm not saying it was murder, she told the investigators with carefully practiced reluctance. But as a medical professional, I've never seen a family react to a death quite like this. Usually, there's more grief and less financial planning. By noon, the Hoffman's perfect plan was beginning to unravel. The insurance company had frozen the life insurance payout pending investigation. Officer Kelly had confessed to Detective Crawford, who was now armed with search warrants. And somewhere in Denver, a man they thought they'd killed was methodically destroying everything they'd built. But Vincent was just getting started. He'd spent years learning that the most devastating attacks came not from without, but from within. The Hoffmans had counted on his death to cover their crimes. They were about to learn that resurrection came with a price, and Vincent Torres collected his debts in full. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. The psychological warfare began at exactly 3:17 a.m. when every electronic device in the Hoffman house simultaneously activated. Televisions turned on by themselves, radios began playing static, and Patricia's phone started calling random numbers from her contact list. Miguel's handiwork was subtle but terrifying, the kind of technological haunting that made people question their own sanity. But the real message came when all the screens in the house displayed the same image, a photo of Vincent, very much alive, taken just hours earlier with a timestamp that proved he'd somehow survived his own death. The screaming from the surveillance feed was immediate and satisfying. "This isn't happening," Rebecca shrieked, frantically trying to turn off devices that wouldn't respond to any commands. "Dead people don't send photos." Raymond, his medical training making him more analytical even in panic, stared at the image with growing horror. "That's impossible. I checked his pulse myself. He was dead." "Well, he's not dead now," Patricia screamed, throwing a crystal vase at the television. The screen shattered, but Vincent's face remained visible through the spiderweb of cracks, smiling with predatory satisfaction. Emma, awakened by the chaos, appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "What's wrong? Why is everyone yelling?" "Go back to bed," Rebecca snapped, but Emma had already seen her father's face on the broken screen. "Daddy!" she gasped, clapping her hands together. "I told you he wasn't really dead. I told you he was coming back." The look of pure joy on his daughter's face, even through the grainy surveillance feed, made Vincent's heart soar. But it also hardened his resolve for what was coming next. Phase 2, he told Miguel through their communication link. It's time for them to understand that death was the easy option. What followed was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. Over the next 72 hours, Vincent systematically dismantled the Hoffmans' lives piece by piece, always staying one step ahead, always making them feel his presence without revealing his location. Their bank accounts were frozen when Detective Crawford's investigation revealed the suspicious financial transactions. The estate lawyer who'd helped them forge documents was arrested when Tony provided evidence of his fraud. Judge Morrison's wife discovered, through an anonymous tip, that her book club had been used to spread malicious lies, and her outrage led to Patricia being ostracized from Denver social circles. But the cruelest blow came when Rebecca discovered that her previous husband's deaths were being reinvestigated. Vincent had provided authorities with everything Tony had uncovered about Michael Brennan and Thomas Reed. The perfect murders were no longer perfect, and Rebecca's carefully constructed life as a grieving widow was exposed as a pattern of calculated murder. How was he doing this? Rebecca whispered to her parents during one of their increasingly desperate conversations. "How does he know about Michael and Thomas?" "It doesn't matter how," Raymond replied grimly. "What matters is stopping him before he destroys us completely." "How do you stop a dead man?" Patricia asked, her voice cracking with strain. They had no idea that Vincent was listening to every word, watching every move, anticipating every desperate plan they concocted. The surveillance network Miguel had installed was so comprehensive that Vincent knew what they were thinking almost before they did. The turning point came when Rebecca, driven by desperation and fear, made the worst possible decision. "We have to use Emma," she told her parents during what she thought was a private conversation. "If Vincent is really alive, his weakness is still his daughter. We grab Emma, leave the state, and force him to come to us on our terms." Vincent's blood turned to ice as he listened to them plan to kidnap his daughter. The psychological warfare was over. Now it was time for the kind of justice that didn't require courts or laws. "Tony," Miguel, he said quietly into his communication device. "It's time." That night, as the Hoffmans prepared to flee with Emma, they found their escape routes systematically blocked. Their cars wouldn't start. Miguel had disabled them remotely. The airport had their names flagged for questioning Detective Crawford's influence. The bus station was being watched, Tony's surveillance team. They were trapped in their own house with a 6-year-old girl and the growing certainty that Vincent Torres was coming for them. The front door opened at exactly midnight. Vincent walked into the Hoffman house like an avenging angel, no longer bothering to hide his resurrection. He'd traded his hospital gown for black clothing that made him look like a shadow, given human form. Behind him came Tony and Miguel, their faces grim with purpose. "Hello, family," Vincent said pleasantly, as if he'd just returned from a business trip instead of rising from the dead. "I believe we have some things to discuss." Patricia fainted immediately. Raymond backed against the wall, his medical mind trying to process how a man he'd personally pronounced dead was standing in his living room. Rebecca clutched Emma protectively, though it was unclear whether she was protecting the child or using her as a shield. "Daddy!" Emma broke free and ran to Vincent, who swept her up in his arms with infinite gentleness. "Hello, sweetheart," he said softly, his voice warm and loving despite the Arctic rage in his eyes when he looked at the others. "Did you miss me? I knew you weren't really dead," Emma whispered, hugging him tightly. "I knew you'd come back for me." "I promised I'd always protect you," Vincent replied, kissing her forehead. "And I always keep my promises." He looked at Rebecca over Emma's head, and she physically recoiled from the cold fury in his expression. "Now then," Vincent said conversationally, "shall we discuss attempted murder, insurance fraud, child endangerment, and kidnapping? Or would you prefer to start with the serial killing?" The reckoning had begun, and for the Hoffmans, death would have been a mercy. Chapter 9. Final Justice. Vincent set Emma down gently and gestured for Tony to take her to the kitchen. "Uncle Tony is going to make you some hot chocolate while Daddy talks to Mommy and Grandma and Grandpa. Okay?" Emma nodded, understanding with a child's intuition that adult business was about to happen. As Tony led her away, Vincent's demeanor shifted from loving father to something far more dangerous. "Sit down," he commanded, and the three Hoffmans collapsed into chairs like marionettes with cut strings. "Vincent," Rebecca began, her voice shaking, "I can explain." "You can be quiet," Vincent interrupted, his tone mild but carrying absolute authority. "You've done enough talking. 3 husbands worth by my count." He walked slowly around the living room, his presence dominating the space. "Let me tell you what's going to happen. Detective Crawford is outside with arrest warrants for all 3 of you. Insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and child endangerment to start. But that's just the legal system." Vincent stopped in front of Raymond, studying the broken man who'd helped plan his murder. "You're going to lose your medical consulting license, Raymond. I've already provided evidence of your illegal drug distribution to the state board. Your malpractice insurance is dropping you tomorrow, and every law firm in Colorado will know you're toxic." Raymond's face crumpled as his last professional connections evaporated. "Patricia," Vincent continued, turning to his mother-in-law, "your social circle already knows about your lies and manipulation. But that's just the beginning. The IRS received an interesting tip about unreported income from the liquidation of my first predecessor's business. You'll spend whatever time you don't serve in prison fighting tax evasion charges." Patricia tried to speak, but Vincent's raised hand silenced her. "Rebecca," he said finally, his voice dropping to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than any shout. "You're in prison for a very long time. The authorities are reopening Michael's and Thomas's cases with the evidence I provided. 3 dead husbands in suspicious circumstances tends to establish a pattern." "But Emma," Rebecca started desperately. "Emma will never see you again," Vincent cut her off. "I have full custody documentation prepared by lawyers who actually passed the bar exam. She'll grow up knowing that her mother was a killer who tried to destroy our family." The defeat in their eyes was complete, but Vincent wasn't finished. "However," he continued, "prison is a civilized punishment, and what you did to my family was not civilized." Miguel appeared in the doorway, holding a tablet that showed financial records. "It's done," he reported. "Every account, every asset, every investment, all seized by federal authorities as proceeds from criminal activity." Vincent smiled coldly. "You wanted my money? You'll never see a penny. Every dollar you thought you'd stolen is going to a trust fund for Emma's education and therapy." She'll need help recovering from what you've done to her. You can't do this, Raymond whispered. You're not the law. No, Vincent agreed. I'm something much worse. I'm a father protecting his child from monsters who wore the faces of family. The sound of sirens grew closer as Detective Crawford's team surrounded the house. Vincent, Rebecca pleaded one last time. Emma needs her mother. You can't take her away from me. Vincent studied his wife's face. The face he'd once loved, now revealed as a mask hiding a predator. Emma needed a mother. Instead, she got you. But don't worry, she'll have someone who actually loves her. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Maria? It's Vincent. Yes, I'm alive. Long story. I need you to come to Denver immediately. Emma needs you. Maria Castellano, Tony's sister and a pediatric nurse who'd become close to Emma over the years, had already agreed to help raise the child. Unlike Rebecca, Maria understood that love meant protection, not exploitation. As the police flooded into the house, Vincent knelt down to Emma's eye level in the kitchen. Sweetheart, Mommy has to go away for a while. She did some very bad things, and she needs to learn to be better. Emma nodded solemnly. Are you going to be okay, Daddy? You seem different. Vincent's heart clenched. His daughter was so perceptive, picking up on the changes in him that others missed. He was different, harder, colder, more dangerous, but never toward her. I'm going to be fine, he assured her. And you're going to be fine too. Aunt Maria is coming to help take care of you, and we're going to have a good life together. Without Mommy, Vincent chose his words carefully. Mommy made choices that hurt our family. Sometimes when people hurt us badly, we have to protect ourselves by staying away from them. Emma considered this with the seriousness of a much older child. Like when Tommy at school was mean to me, and you said I didn't have to play with him anymore? Exactly like that, Vincent confirmed. Sometimes the people who should love us the most are the ones who hurt us the worst. But that doesn't mean everyone will hurt us. As Rebecca, Patricia, and Raymond were led away in handcuffs, Rebecca screamed one final time, Emma, Mommy loves you. Emma looked at her mother being arrested, then back at Vincent. If she loved me, why did she try to hurt you? The question revealed a wisdom beyond her years, born from trauma, but tempered by her father's love. Some people don't know how to love properly, Vincent explained. But you'll learn the right way. I promise. 6 months later, Vincent stood in his rebuilt auto shop, watching Emma play with a toy car while Maria helped her with homework. The Hoffmans were gone. Rebecca convicted of 3 counts of murder and sentenced to life without parole, Patricia and Raymond serving federal time for conspiracy and fraud. Officer Kelly had testified against them all in exchange for a reduced sentence, though he'd never work in law enforcement again. The corrupt networks they'd used to attack Vincent had been systematically exposed and dismantled. Tony entered the shop, carrying coffee and wearing the satisfaction of a job well done. The last of the appeals was denied, he reported. Rebecca's lawyer tried to claim ineffective counsel, but the judge wasn't buying it. Good, Vincent replied simply. He felt no joy in their destruction, only the cold satisfaction of justice served. Any regrets? Tony asked, studying his old friend's face. Vincent looked at Emma, who was showing Maria a drawing she'd made of their new family. Vincent, herself, Maria, and conspicuously absent figures who'd once been labeled Mommy, Grandma Pat, and Grandpa Ray. No, Vincent said finally. They chose to declare war on my family. I just finished what they started. Emma looked up from her drawing and smiled at him. The same bright, trusting smile she'd always had, unmarked by the trauma her mother's family had tried to inflict. Daddy, look, I drew us at the park. Vincent knelt down to examine the artwork, his heart full despite everything they'd endured. It's beautiful, sweetheart, just like our life is going to be. As evening fell over Denver, Vincent Torres, survivor, father, and protector, helped his daughter pack up her toys. The old Vincent, the dangerous one, was still there beneath the surface, ready to emerge if anyone ever threatened his family again. But for now, in the safety they'd built from the ashes of betrayal, he could simply be what Emma needed most, a father who kept his promises and never let the monsters win. The perfect betrayal had met its perfect match, and justice, though delayed, had finally come home. And there you have it, another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Dead Man's Return. The rain hammered against the windows of the small two-story house on Maple Street as Sean Anthony unpacked the last box in what used to be his home office. 3 years. 3 years since the Department of Defense had declared Colonel Sean Anthony killed in action during a classified operation in the Kandahar province. 3 years since his wife Tamara had collected his death benefits and moved on with her life. 3 years since he'd been operating in the deepest shadows of military intelligence, a ghost hunting ghosts. Now he was back, and the woman who'd mourned him looked at him like he was a stranger. Sean was 42, his dark hair showing premature silver at the temples, souvenirs from his years running black ops missions across 3 continents. His frame was lean and hard, muscles coiled tight beneath his civilian clothes. The Distinguished Service Cross sat in a box somewhere, along with 2 Purple Hearts and commendations he'd never talk about. He'd commanded Delta Force teams, run operations that never made the papers, and survived situations that would have broken lesser men. But coming home to Tamara's cold indifference was somehow worse than enemy fire. "You're still unpacking?" Tamara appeared in the doorway, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She'd always been beautiful, sharp features, calculating green eyes that had once looked at him with something resembling love. Now they held only impatience. "It's been 2 weeks, Sean. Government kept me in debriefing for 8 months after extraction," he said evenly, sliding a photo frame onto the shelf. Their wedding photo from 9 years ago. Different lifetime, different people. Then medical evaluations, physical therapy, psych evals. "You know how it goes." "Do I?" Her laugh was bitter. "You've been gone 3 years. I thought you were dead. I buried an empty coffin, Sean. I grieved. I moved on." There it was. Moved on. He'd noticed the way she flinched when he touched her. The separate bedrooms she'd insisted on. "You need space to readjust." The phone call she took in private. The new expensive car in the driveway she'd explained away as treating myself. "I called you as soon as they allowed me to make contact," Sean said quietly. "The mission was classified. Deep cover. I couldn't." "I know this speech." She waved him off. "I've heard it 5 times now. Look, I have to run out. Meeting with Sheila about the charity event." Sheila Fraser, Tamara's best friend since college. He'd never liked her. Too interested in money, too quick to judge. But Tamara had always defended her. "What charity event?" "The Veterans Relief Foundation Gala. I'm on the planning committee." A slight edge in her voice. "Some of us didn't stop living just because you were gone." She left before he could respond, heels clicking down the hallway. The front door slammed. Sean stood in the silence, his instincts screaming. The same instincts that had kept him alive through dozens of operations. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He walked to the window and watched Tamara's Mercedes pull out of the driveway. Then he moved to the desk and pulled out the laptop he'd picked up from a military surplus dealer. Untraceable, encrypted, off any network the government monitored. Old habits. He'd been watching her for the past week. Not because he wanted to, but because his training wouldn't let him ignore the signs. The whispered phone calls. The cash withdrawals. The way she tensed whenever he entered a room. The laptop contained software he wasn't supposed to have anymore. Programs that could crack passwords, track phones, access security cameras. He'd already cloned her phone 2 days ago when she left it charging in the kitchen. What he found made his blood run cold. Text messages to a contact saved as B. Dozens of them. B. When is he leaving again? Tamara. He doesn't leave. He's always here. I can't breathe. B. We need to talk about the plan. Tonight? Tamara. Yes. The usual place. 9 p.m. The messages went back weeks. Before he'd even finished his debriefings. Before he'd come home. Sean leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight. He'd faced enemy combatants, survived torture, led men through hell. But this was different. This was betrayal from someone he'd trusted with his life. He kept reading. More messages. More meetings. And then, from last night, B. $2 million in life insurance. Split it 50/50ths. No one will question it after everything you've been through. Tamara, I can't keep doing this. Living with him. Pretending. B. You won't have to much longer. I promise. Sean closed the laptop, his mind shifting into operational mode. Emotion had no place here. Not yet. First, gather intelligence. Identify the enemy. Assess the threat. Plan the response. He needed to know who B was. He needed to know what they were planning. And he needed to know how deep this went. Because if there was one thing Sean Anthony knew how to do, it was hunting down enemies. And he'd just identified 2 new targets. Chapter 2. The Conspiracy. Brett Bowers considered himself a smart man. At 38, he'd built a modestly successful real estate business in suburban Connecticut, drove a leased BMW, and had a rotation of 3 different bars where people knew his name. He had a friendly face, the kind women trusted, sandy hair, easy smile, just enough charm to be dangerous. He also had expensive tastes that outpaced his income, a gambling problem he hid well, and a total lack of conscience. Tamara Anthony had walked into his open house 18 months ago, and Brett had seen opportunity. A military widow, vulnerable and lonely, with a massive life insurance payout sitting in her bank account. $2 million that she'd barely touched, like she was waiting for permission to enjoy it. Brett had given her that permission, along with attention, romance, and promises of a life free from the shadow of her dead husband. Except Sean Anthony wasn't dead anymore. This is a disaster, Brett muttered, pacing across Tamara's hotel room. They've been meeting here for months, the Riverside Inn, paying cash, using fake names. When you called me saying he was alive, I thought you were having a breakdown. I wish I was. Tamara sat on the edge of the bed, her head in her hands. He just showed up at the door like nothing happened. The army declared him dead, Brett. We had a funeral. I collected the insurance. And now he's back, sleeping down the hall, acting like he belongs here. You need to return the money. I can't. Her voice cracked. I spent $40,000 on the car. Another $30,000 on renovations. I gave $50,000 to Sheila for the charity. Our charity, Brett. The one we set up to funnel. Don't. He held up a hand. Don't talk about that here. The Veterans Relief Foundation. It had been Sheila's idea, actually. A fake charity to launder Brett's gambling debts and Tamara's suspicious expenses. They'd even hosted a few small events, enough to look legitimate. The real money went into offshore accounts, carefully hidden behind layers of shell corporations. It was working perfectly until Sean Anthony came back from the dead. What if he finds out? Tamara asked, her green eyes wide with fear. About us? About the money? About everything? Brett stopped pacing. He won't. He was in special forces, Brett. He's trained to fight terrorists, not investigate insurance fraud. Brett sat beside her, taking her hand. Look, he's been through hell. He's adjusting. He's not thinking clearly. We just need to be careful until he deploys again. He's not deploying. He's retired. Medical discharge. He's here permanently. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Brett's mind raced. $2 million. Half of it was supposed to be his. They'd planned it all out. Wait a respectable time after the funeral, get married quietly, combine finances, live comfortably. He'd already spent money he didn't have based on those expectations. And now this dead man was ruining everything. There has to be a way, Brett said slowly, to make him go away again. Tamara pulled her hand back. What are you saying? I'm saying we have options. He stood, the wheels turning. Think about it. He's traumatized, suffering from PTSD, probably. Violent nightmares, maybe? Paranoid behavior. Brett, I'm not saying we do anything. I'm saying we document things. Build a case that he's dangerous. Unstable. Then, if something were to happen, if there was an incident, nobody would be surprised. Tamara stared at him. You want to kill him? I want us to have the life we planned, Brett corrected. The life we deserve. He's been gone 3 years, Tamara. You don't owe him anything. You've moved on. You have a right to be happy. He could see her wavering. Tamara had always been easy to manipulate. Beautiful, insecure, desperate for someone to take control. Brett had recognized it the moment they met. "Ow," she whispered. Brett smiled. "Let me make some calls. I know people, guys from my army days." He'd done 2 years in the National Guard before getting kicked out for disciplinary issues, but he kept in touch with a few useful contacts. Meanwhile, you start documenting erratic behavior. Write it down. Tell your friends you're scared. Build the narrative. And then Colonel Sean Anthony has a tragic accident. Maybe he's cleaning a weapon and it goes off. Maybe his PTSD gets the better of him. Either way, you're a widow again. Legitimately this time. Tamara was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay." Brett kissed her forehead, hiding his smile. It would work. It had to work. He owed serious people serious money, and $2 million would solve every problem he had. He just needed to make sure one decorated war hero didn't get in the way. Chapter 3. Surveillance. Sean watched them through the scope of his surveillance binoculars from across the street. The Riverside Inn, room 237. Tamara had said she was meeting Sheila. Instead, she'd driven straight here to meet a man Sean had identified within 6 hours of starting his investigation. Brett Bowers, age 38, dishonorable discharge from the National Guard, failed businesses, mounting debts, and a charming smile that probably worked on desperate women. Sean had accessed his financial records, easy enough with the right access codes, and found a man drowning in gambling debt and bad investments. Through the scope, he watched them talk. Body language spoke volumes. Brett's hand on Tamara's shoulder, possessive and controlling. Tamara's posture, leaning toward him, seeking comfort. The way they moved together suggested intimacy, months of it, maybe longer. Sean lowered the binoculars, his expression neutral. In the field, emotional detachment was survival. You analyzed the enemy's behavior without judgment, identified patterns, exploited weaknesses. Personal feelings got you killed. He couldn't afford to feel anything right now. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Sean Anthony? A familiar voice, rough with age but still commanding. General McNeil. Sean felt genuine surprise. Tristan McNeil had commanded JSOC operations, the man who'd sent Sean on his final classified mission. Didn't expect to hear from you, sir. I heard you were stateside. Thought I'd check in. A pause. How's civilian life treating you? Differently than expected. McNeil chuckled darkly. They always do. Listen, I'm in Hartford next week. Boring Defense Department meetings. Buy you a drink. Appreciated, sir. And Sean, if you need anything at all, you call me. You earn that much. Yes, sir. The call ended. Sean pocketed the phone, a plan beginning to form. He wasn't just dealing with an unfaithful wife and her criminal boyfriend. He was dealing with people actively plotting against him. The text messages made that clear enough. No one will question it after everything you've been through. They were planning to kill him, make it look like suicide or an accident, probably claim PTSD. It was a smart play, actually. Everyone would believe a traumatized veteran couldn't adjust to civilian life. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. Sean returned to his house. He couldn't think of it as home anymore and went to the basement. He'd set up a workshop down here, telling Tamara he needed space to work on projects. She'd seemed relieved to have him occupied. The real workspace was behind the false wall he'd installed in 2 hours while she was out. Inside, he'd created an operations center. Monitors showing feeds from cameras he'd planted throughout the house. Audio equipment. Weapons stored in a hidden safe. Everything he needed. He reviewed the footage from the day. Tamara, making calls, always checking over her shoulder. Her conversation with Sheila, where they discussed the Sean situation and how Brett has a plan. Sheila Frazier was involved too. Of course she was. She'd probably helped connect Brett and Tamara in the first place. Sean pulled up the financial records he'd compiled on all 3 of them. That's when he found it, the Veterans Relief Foundation, a charity Tamara and Sheila ran, supposedly helping veterans transition to civilian life. Except the money trail told a different story. Donations came in, small amounts, nothing suspicious. But the expenditures were creative fiction. Fake vendor payments, inflated costs for events, money disappearing into shell corporations that ultimately led to offshore accounts. They weren't just planning to kill him. They'd been stealing from veterans for over a year. Something cold settled in Sean's chest. He'd spent 3 years protecting people who couldn't protect themselves, fighting enemies who threatened innocent lives. And while he was gone, his own wife had been exploiting the very community he'd served. The anger came then, controlled and focused. Not the hot rage of betrayal, but the cold calculation of a man who knew exactly how to hurt his enemies. He spent the next 3 hours planning. Not just survival. Anyone could survive. This required precision, multiple objectives, complete dismantling of everyone involved. By midnight, he had a strategy. It would take 2 weeks to execute properly. 2 weeks to gather everything he needed. 2 weeks to let them think they were winning. Then he'd show them what happens when you target a Delta Force operator. Sean heard footsteps upstairs. Tamara coming home. He quickly shut down the monitors, closed the hidden door, and walked to the basement stairs. She stood in the kitchen, startled to see him. "Couldn't sleep," he said, his voice neutral. "How was Sheila?" "Oh, good. We're making progress on the gala." She didn't quite meet his eyes. "I'm exhausted, though. Heading to bed." "Tamara." He stopped her with a word. "I know the transition has been hard. For both of us. I want you to know, I'm grateful you waited, that you're giving us a chance." Her face flickered, guilt, maybe, or calculation. "Of course. You're my husband." She went upstairs. Sean remained in the darkened kitchen, listening to her footsteps fade. The trap was set. Now he just needed to wait for them to step into it. Chapter 4. The Hunter Hunts. Brett Bowers met with Ricky Huber in a strip mall parking lot at 2 a.m., because that's where people met when discussing murder. Ricky was a contact from Brett's National Guard days, the kind of guy who'd been dishonorably discharged for reasons that weren't discussed in polite company. Now he did freelance security work for people with money and problems. "So you want this colonel dead," Ricky said, lighting a cigarette in the front seat of his truck. He was built like a linebacker gone to seed, with dead eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. "I want options," Brett corrected. "Something that looks natural. Natural costs extra. Accidents take planning." Ricky blew smoke toward the cracked window. "This guy, Anthony, he's legit special forces?" "Was. He's retired. Medical discharge. Delta Force don't retire, man. They just go dormant." Ricky shook his head. "You're asking me to hit a trained operator in his own home. That's suicide rates. 20,000 up front. 30 when it's done." That got Ricky's attention. "You got that kind of cash?" Brett didn't, but he would. He'd already taken out loans against properties he barely owned, promising himself it would all be worth it. "I've got it." "When?" "Soon. We need to move fast." Brett leaned closer. "The wife will help from inside. She'll make sure the alarm is off. Doors unlocked. She'll document erratic behavior. PTSD episodes, violent outbursts. Build the narrative. And then I walk in, pop him while he's sleeping, make it look like suicide. Something like that. Or a cleaning accident. He's got weapons in the house. Lots of them, apparently." Ricky considered this. "I'll need surveillance first. Learn his patterns. Entry and exit points. 3 days minimum. You've got 2. Then the price is 60. Non-negotiable." Brett gritted his teeth but nodded. It didn't matter. Once Sean was dead and the insurance money was secured, these debts would disappear. What Brett didn't know was that Sean had been following him since he left the Riverside Inn. What Brett couldn't see was the small tracking device attached to his car's undercarriage, or the directional microphone aimed at his truck from 300 yards away, or the night vision scope watching every movement. Sean recorded the entire conversation from his position in the tree line. He photographed Ricky Huber's license plate, then spent 20 minutes in his own vehicle running the identification through military databases he technically no longer had access to. Ricky Huber, dishonorable discharge for selling stolen military equipment. Suspected in 2 unsolved homicides. Currently under investigation by the ATF for illegal weapons trafficking. Perfect. Sean drove home, his mind cataloging every detail. He now had 3 primary targets, Tamara, Brett, and Ricky, plus 1 secondary target, Sheila Frazier. The conspiracy was larger than he'd thought. More people were involved in the charity fraud, which meant more evidence to collect. He arrived home at 3:30 a.m. to find Tamara still awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine. "Working late?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Couldn't sleep. Went for a drive." He hung his keys by the door. "You?" "Same. This insomnia is killing me." She studied him over the rim of her glass. "Sean, I need to talk to you about something." Here it comes, he thought. The setup. "I'm worried about you," she continued. "You seem disconnected. Angry sometimes. I know you're dealing with a lot, and I want to support you, but I also need to feel safe in my own home." "Safe?" He kept his voice level. "Have I done something to make you feel unsafe?" "No, not exactly. But last night, you were cleaning your rifle at midnight, and you've been disappearing at odd hours. And yesterday, I heard you shouting in the basement." "I wasn't shouting. I was on a phone." It sounded violent. Her eyes were wide, performing concern. "Maybe you should talk to someone. A therapist. Someone who understands what you've been through. You think I have PTSD. I think you've experienced trauma and need help processing it." She reached for his hand. He let her take it, even though her touch made his skin crawl. "I'm on your side, Sean, but you have to meet me halfway." The manipulation was elegant. She was building the record, exactly as Brett had told her to, documenting concerning behavior, creating a paper trail that would later justify whatever they had planned. "You're right," Sean said, letting defeat color his voice. "I'll make an appointment with the VA. Maybe get on some medication." Relief flooded her features. "Thank you. I just want us to be okay." "So do I." He squeezed her hand, looking into her eyes. "You're all I have, Tamara. Coming home to you is what kept me alive over there." Guilt flickered across her face, genuine emotion breaking through the performance. For just a moment, he saw the woman he'd married. Then it was gone, replaced by the stranger who was plotting his murder. "Get some sleep," she said, withdrawing her hand. "Things will look better in the morning." Sean went to his room and closed the door. Then he retrieved his laptop and began phase 2 of his operation. He'd recorded Tamara's statement. He had Brett's conversation with Ricky Huber on audio. He had financial records showing the charity fraud. Now, he needed to connect all the pieces in a way that would destroy them completely. He started with Ricky Huber. One anonymous call to the ATF about illegal weapons in storage unit 247 would trigger investigation. But Sean wanted more than that. He wanted Ricky to lead the feds directly to Brett. Next, he drafted documents that would quietly expose the Veterans Relief Foundation's fraud, but not to the police. Not yet. Instead, he sent carefully worded inquiries to the IRS and several veteran advocacy groups, asking innocent questions about the foundation's finances. It would take weeks for the investigations to ramp up, but when they did, every transaction would be scrutinized. Finally, he composed a message to General McNeil, outlining the situation in careful terms. He didn't ask for help, not yet, but he wanted someone outside the conspiracy to know what was happening, just in case. By dawn, Sean had positioned all his pieces. Now, he just needed to wait for his enemies to make their move. Chapter 5, The Swatting. It happened on a Tuesday night, exactly 8 days after Sean had recorded Brett's conversation with Ricky Huber. Sean was in his basement operations center, reviewing surveillance footage, when he heard Tamara on the phone upstairs. Her voice carried through the vents, urgent, panicked, performing fear. "Please, you have to help me. My husband, he's having an episode. He's got weapons. He's saying things that don't make sense. He's going to hurt someone. Maybe himself. I don't know what to do." Sean's blood went cold. Not with fear, with recognition. She was swatting him. He accessed the police scanner on his computer, and sure enough, within 2 minutes a call went out. "All units, we have a report of an armed and dangerous individual at 2847 Maple Street. Subject is trained military, possibly suffering mental health crisis. Approach with extreme caution." Then the kicker from the police chief's direct line, Lloyd Carlson's voice. "Authorization for SWAT deployment. Suspect is barricaded and has expressed suicidal ideation with intention to harm first responders. Rules of engagement. Use of deadly force authorized if threatened. Shoot on sight." Tamara had just called in a kill order on her own husband. Sean moved fast. He had maybe 10 minutes before the SWAT team arrived. He climbed the stairs calmly, finding Tamara in the living room, her phone clutched to her chest, real tears streaming down her face. "Sean, please," she said, performing for the recording. "Just put the gun down. We can get you help." "I don't have a gun, Tamara. You're scaring me. I know exactly what you're doing." He spoke quietly, without anger. "You call the police. Told them I'm armed and dangerous. Told them to shoot me." Very clever. Her mask slipped. For just a second, he saw the calculation in her eyes. "You're paranoid," she said, but her voice wavered. "You need help. I need you to sit down and be quiet. Because in about 7 minutes, a SWAT team is going to kick in that door. And if you've done this right, they're going to be looking for a reason to shoot me." Sirens in the distance, growing closer. Sean walked to his gun safe, opened it, and removed his hunting rifle, the one he'd been cleaning that night Tamara mentioned. He sat down in his recliner, in the dark, and began methodically field stripping and cleaning the weapon. Tamara watched him, horror dawning on her face. "What are you doing?" "Waiting. Sean, they're going to kill you. Maybe. Or maybe they're going to recognize me." The sirens were right outside now. Squealing tires. Shouted commands. The mechanical crunch of the battering ram hitting the front door. "Police. Search warrant. Show your hands." The door burst inward. 6 SWAT officers poured into the house, weapons up, lasers painting the darkness. They found Sean sitting in his recliner, cleaning his rifle, completely calm. "Drop the weapon. Drop it now." Sean didn't move. He looked up at the officer in front, Captain Hector Nichols, according to his name tape. Their eyes met in the dim light. Recognition dawned on Nichols's face like sunrise. "Colonel." Nichols lowered his weapon. "Colonel Anthony?" "Captain Nichols." Sean's voice was steady. "Been a while." Nichols looked around at his team, then back at Sean. "We thought you were dead, sir." "Kia, in Afghanistan. 3 years ago. I got better." Sean carefully set down the rifle, hands visible. "Mind if I stand? This is getting uncomfortable." "Jesus Christ." Nichols turned to his team. "Stand down. Stand down." The other officers lowered their weapons, confused. "Sir, we got a call." "I know what you got." Sean stood slowly. "My wife called it in. Made me sound like a dangerous psychotic." He gestured toward Tamara, frozen in the doorway. "She's right there, by the way. Tamara Anthony. You want to arrest her." Nichols stared. "Sir, arrest her, Captain. Attempted murder. Filing a false police report. Probably fraud too, but we'll get to that." Sean's voice hardened. "And then I need you and your team to clear the room. What I'm about to explain is classified, and you don't have the clearance." "Colonel, I don't understand." "You will." Sean looked directly at Tamara. Tell them what you did." Tamara's face crumbled. "I don't. I was trying to help. You called police and told them I was armed, dangerous, and suicidal. You specifically told the chief to authorize deadly force. That's attempted murder using law enforcement as the weapon." Sean's tone was ice. "You did it because you want the insurance money. You and your boyfriend, Brett Bowers. The boyfriend you've been sleeping with since 6 months after my death. The boyfriend who's currently arranging to have me killed by Ricky Huber, a known criminal." Every word was a hammer blow. Tamara collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Nichols looked from Tamara to Sean. "Sir, these are serious accusations. They're facts, and I have evidence for all of it." Sean pulled a flash drive from his pocket. "Audio recordings, financial records, text messages, everything you need. But first, I need you to arrest her before she destroys evidence or warns her accomplices." Nichols hesitated for only a second, then nodded sharply. "Cuff her." 2 officers moved forward. Tamara didn't resist as they pulled her to her feet and secured her wrists behind her back. She was still crying, but whether from fear or guilt or anger, Sean couldn't tell. Didn't care. "Everyone else, out," Sean commanded, and despite not being in the military anymore, his tone carried enough authority that the SWAT team complied. Nichols remained. "Sir, what is this really about?" "It's about people who thought a dead man couldn't fight back." Sean handed him the flash drive. "Everything you need is on there." "But Nichols? This goes bigger than just my wife. There are others involved. Criminals. Fraud. People victimizing veterans. What do you need from me?" "Time. Don't process her until morning. Let me work tonight. By sunrise, you'll have 3 more arrests to make, and they'll all be gift-wrapped. Nichols studied him for a long moment. They'd served together, briefly, in Iraq. Nichols had been a lieutenant then, fresh and idealistic. Sean had saved his life during an ambush. That kind of debt didn't expire. "You've got until low 600, Nichols said finally. "After that, this is by the book." "Understood." Nichols left, taking Tamara with him. Sean watched through the window as they loaded her into a police car. She looked back at the house once, her face pale in the flashing lights. Then they were gone, and Sean was alone. He allowed himself 30 seconds to feel it, the betrayal, the anger, the grief for a marriage that had died 3 years ago. He just hadn't known it. 30 seconds. Then he locked it away and became the operator again. Because the night wasn't over. It had just begun. Chapter 6. The Unraveling. Brett Bowers knew something was wrong when Tamara didn't answer her phone. He'd been calling for an hour, each call going straight to voicemail. The plan was simple. She'd make the call, police would respond to a violent domestic situation, and tragically, Sean Anthony would be shot resisting arrest. Cops kill veterans all the time. No one would question it. But Tamara should have called him by now. Brett paced his apartment, his nerves fraying. He'd already paid Ricky Huber $20,000, money he'd borrowed from a loan shark named Ignacio Berry, who wasn't the forgiving type. If this didn't work, if Sean somehow survived, Brett was finished. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "Brett Bowers?" A calm male voice. "Who is this?" "This is Colonel Sean Anthony. I believe you know who I am." Brett's blood turned to ice. "I don't know what. I know everything, Brett. I know about you and Tamara. I know about the Veterans Relief Foundation fraud. I know you paid Ricky Huber to kill me. I know about your gambling debts, your failed businesses, your dishonorable discharge." A pause. "And I have evidence for all of it. You're bluffing." "Am I?" "The ATF raided Ricky's storage unit 3 hours ago. Found enough illegal weapons to put him away for 20 years. He's currently in custody, and I imagine he's very interested in making a deal. Wonder who will give up first." Brett's legs went weak. He sat down hard on his couch. "What do you want?" he whispered. "I want you to meet me. Alone. Tonight. There's a construction site on Route 7, the old mill building being torn down. You know it." "Yes. Be there in 30 minutes. Come alone. Don't call anyone. Don't warn Sheila or anyone else involved in your little scheme. If you do, I release everything to the FBI. Understand?" "Understand." "Good. See you soon, Brett." The call ended. Brett sat in the darkness, his mind racing. This was a trap. Obviously. Sean was going to kill him or beat him or God knows what. The smart move was to run. Leave town. Disappear. But he couldn't. His car was leased under false pretenses. His credit cards were maxed. He had maybe $300 in actual cash. And Ignacio Berry would find him anywhere he went. He had to face Sean. Brett grabbed his gun, a 9mm he'd bought illegally from Contact, and drove to the construction site. His hands shook on the steering wheel. The old mill was a skeleton of its former self, half demolished, surrounded by chain-link fence. Brett parked outside and walked through the cut fence, his gun drawn but held low. "I'm here," he called into the darkness. Silence. Then a voice from the shadows. "Drop the weapon." "I'm not dropping anything until I see you." "You're not in a position to negotiate, Brett." Suddenly, blinding light. Portable floodlights switched on, illuminating the entire area. Brett squinted, temporarily blinded. When his eyes adjusted, he saw Sean standing 30 feet away, unarmed, hands at his sides. "Just us," Sean said. "No cops. No tricks. Just a conversation." "About what?" "About how much prison time you're facing." "Let's see. Conspiracy to commit murder. That's 25 to life. Insurance fraud, another 10 years. The charity embezzlement, another 5. Plus whatever other charges the IRS adds when they finish investigating." Sean stepped closer. "You're looking at spending the rest of your life in a federal prison, Brett. All for $2 million you never even got. Tamara is in custody. She'll testify against you to save herself. So will Ricky Huber. So will Sheila Frazier, once she realizes how much trouble she's in." Brett raised his gun, hands shaking. Then I've got nothing to lose. You've got your life. Sean's voice was calm. You can't beat me, Brett. I've survived things that would have destroyed you. I've been shot, stabbed, blown up, and tortured by professionals. What do you think you're going to do with that 9mm? I'm going to kill you. No, you're not. Sean moved. 1 second he was standing still. The next he'd covered the distance between them in 3 fluid strides. His hand struck Brett's wrist, and the gun went flying. A knee to the stomach doubled Brett over. Then Sean's hand was on the back of his neck, forcing him down. Brett crashed to his knees, gasping. Here's what's going to happen, Sean said quietly. You're going to confess to everything. The affair, the murder plot, the fraud, all of it. You're going to name everyone involved. And you're going to do it because if you don't, I'll make sure every criminal you've ever crossed knows you're cooperating with the police anyway. Ignacio Berry, for instance. I believe you owe him money. I'm sure he'd love to know where to find you. You can't. Already did. Send him a text from your phone 10 minutes ago, explaining that you're giving his name to the police to reduce your sentence. He's probably on his way here now, actually. Terror flooded Brett's face. You're insane. I'm efficient. Sean released him, stepping back. So you got a choice. Come with me to the police station, confess everything, and maybe you survive this. Or run, and see how long you last with both the law and the mob looking for you. Brett stayed on his knees, broken. He thought he was clever, planning the perfect crime. But he'd targeted the wrong man. Not a traumatized veteran to be manipulated, but a trained operator who'd been 3 steps ahead the entire time. I'll confess, Brett whispered. I'll tell them everything. Smart choice. Sean pulled out his phone and called Captain Nichols. I've got another package for you. Route 7 construction site. Brett Bowers, ready to cooperate. 20 minutes later, police cars arrived. Brett was cuffed and loaded into a cruiser. As they drove away, Sean stood in the floodlights, watching. One more to go. Chapter 7. The Architect. Sheila Fraser knew she was in trouble when the FBI knocked on her door at 6 a.m. 2 agents, professionally dressed, holding badges and a warrant. Ms. Fraser? FBI. We have some questions about the Veterans Relief Foundation. Sheila's careful life collapsed in that moment. She'd been the architect of the whole scheme, actually. Not Brett, not Tamara. They were just her useful pawns. Sheila had experience in non-profit management from her previous job, before she'd been quietly fired for embezzlement they couldn't prove. She'd learned from those mistakes, created a better system, more layers, more misdirection. When Tamara's husband died, Sheila saw opportunity. A vulnerable woman with money and no direction. She'd introduced Tamara to Brett, knowing he was weak and greedy. She'd suggested the charity, helped set it up, manage the books. Then she'd watched as they'd stolen nearly $500,000 from people who'd served their country. And she'd kept 60% of it. Now, sitting in an FBI interrogation room, Sheila realized she'd made a critical error. She'd underestimated Sean Anthony. Let's start with the Veterans Relief Foundation, said Agent Monty Rivers, a sharp-eyed man in his 40s. You're listed as the treasurer. Can you explain these transactions? He slid documents across the table. Bank statements, shell corporations, money trails Sheila thought she'd hidden perfectly. I don't understand, she said, trying for confusion. These are legitimate business expenses. Legitimate. Agent Rivers smiled thinly. You paid $30,000 to a company called Patriot Services LLC for event planning. Except Patriot Services doesn't exist. It's a shell corporation in Delaware with you as the sole signatory. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, Ms. Fraser. We've been investigating you for 6 weeks. He leaned forward. Someone sent us a very detailed tip. Complete financial records, email correspondence, even audio recordings of you discussing the fraud with Tamara Anthony and Brett Bowers. Sean, it had to be. I want my lawyer, Sheila said. That's your right. But let me tell you where you stand. Rivers pulled out more documents. Wire fraud, mail fraud, theft of government funds, identity theft. Yes, we know about the fake veteran profiles you created to claim donations. And conspiracy to commit murder. That last one hit like a punch. I wasn't involved in that. Really? Because we have text messages between you and Tamara Anthony discussing permanent solutions to this Sean problem. We have financial records showing you withdrew $15,000 in cash the same day Brett Bowers paid Ricky Huber. You're implicated, Ms. Frazier. Deeply. Sheila's hands shook. What do you want from me? The truth. All of it. Everyone involved. Every transaction. Every lie. River sat back. Do that, and maybe, you see daylight again before you're 70. Sheila looked at the evidence spread before her. Her careful plans, her perfect crime, laid bare. And she understood, finally, that she'd never been as clever as she thought. She'd just been lucky until she wasn't. There are others, she whispered. Not just us. The charity, we weren't the first. Rivers leaned forward. Explain. I learned it from my previous job. The Hamilton Foundation. They were doing the same thing. Fake charity, stealing from veterans. I just copied their model. She looked up. If you want everyone, I can give you names. Dates. Bank accounts. The whole network. Keep talking. And Sheila did. For 6 hours, she explained how veteran charity fraud had become a cottage industry. How people like her exploited the good while toward military families. How they'd stolen millions from those who'd sacrificed everything. By the end, Agent Rivers had enough evidence to launch a dozen investigations. You'll still go to prison, he told her. But you've helped us. That counts for something. Sheila nodded, numb. She cooperated hoping for leniency, but she knew the truth. She destroyed lives for money. There was no coming back from that. As they led her to a cell, she had one bitter thought. Sean Anthony won. Chapter 8. Justice and Warfare. General Tristan McNeil sat across from Sean in a quiet Hartford bar, nursing a bourbon and listening to the whole story. When Sean finished, McNeil was quiet for a long moment. Hell of a homecoming, he finally said. Yes, sir. You handled it well. Methodically. Completely. McNeil sipped his drink. Though I have to ask, was this about justice or revenge? Sean considered the question. Both, sir. They tried to kill me. That requires response. But they were also hurting veterans through that charity fraud. That couldn't stand. Agreed. McNeil set down his glass. The FBI investigation you triggered is expanding. Sounds like veteran charity fraud is bigger than anyone realized. You've done real good, Sean. Just finish what I started, sir. No, you went beyond that. McNeil leaned forward. Which is why I have a proposition. The Department of Defense is creating a new task force, investigating fraud, corruption, and crimes targeting military families. Not frontline work. Analytical mostly. Intelligence gathering. But important work. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you purpose. You're too good to waste on civilian life, Sean. And you're too young to retire to a rocking chair. McNeil smiled slightly. Plus, you've just proven you're exceptionally good at taking down criminals who think they're smarter than everyone else. Sean thought about it. The house on Maple Street was empty now, tainted by betrayal. He had no ties keeping him in Connecticut, no reason to stay, and he was bored with civilian life. What's the timeline? He asked. Report to Arlington in 2 weeks. We'll set you up. New assignment. Fresh start. Sean nodded slowly. Yes, sir. I accept. They shook hands. McNeil signaled for another round. What about Tamara? McNeil asked. She's cooperating with prosecutors. Testified against Brett. Confirmed everything. She'll probably get 10 to 15 years with parole possibility. Sean's voice was flat. She made her choices. And you? How are you handling it? I'm a soldier, sir. I deal with difficult situations. This is just another mission completed. McNeil studied him. You know it's okay to feel something about this. She was your wife. She was someone I thought I knew. Sean finished his drink. The real Tamara, the one who'd plot my murder for insurance money? I never knew her at all. They sat in silence for a while, two warriors who understood that some wounds didn't show on the outside. Chapter 9. The Ghost Walks. 3 months later, Sean stood in a military courtroom at Fort Bragg, watching the final piece fall into place. Ricky Huber sat in orange prison scrubs, shackled, looking smaller than he had that night in the parking lot. The judge, a stern military colonel named Dwayne Yates, read the verdict. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder of a military officer, the defendant is found guilty. On charges of illegal weapons trafficking, guilty. On charges of, it went on, 23 charges total. Ricky Huber was going to die in prison. Brett Bowers had already been sentenced, 35 years, no parole for 20. He confessed to everything, but it hadn't saved him. Tamara would face sentencing next month. Sean wouldn't attend. Sheila Frazier had gotten 15 years for her cooperation, but the investigation she'd triggered was still ongoing. 6 other fake charities had been exposed. Dozens of arrests. Millions of stolen dollars recovered and returned to legitimate veterans organizations. One good thing from all the destruction. After the sentencing, Captain Hector Nichols found Sean in the hallway. "Colonel, glad I caught you." "Captain." They shook hands. "Good work on the investigation." "I just followed the evidence you provided, sir." Nichols hesitated. "Can I ask, did you plan all of this from the start? The recordings, the surveillance, the way it all came together?" Sean smiled slightly. "I planned to survive. Everything else was just good operational practice. You played them perfectly. They played themselves. I just gave them the rope." Sean checked his watch. "I have to go. New assignment starts tomorrow." "Where are they sending you?" "Can't say. Classified." He paused. "But it's good